So today we're going to take a look at what's going to happen if the Russian Empire reunites in the modern day. This video is going to be very unrealistic. All the events that are going to happen are purely fictional. But yeah, let's see what happens if the Russian Empire reunites in the modern day. Let's see who they declare war on, how they expand, and all those other stuff. But before we get into this video, first of all, I want to ask you guys to subscribe to the channel, also to the second channel where I'm uploading Age of History 3 videos. Make sure to join the Discord server via the link in the description. And yeah, now let's get right into the video. Now, the first thing here is that the Russian Empire is going to be extremely unstable if it were to return in the modern day, just because of how many countries there are inside of the Russian Empire. I mean, look at all of Eastern Europe, but then there's Alaska too, and all of Central Asia too, so this is going to be pretty unstable. We're just going to assume that they are stable, otherwise it'd be impossible for them to expand. And speaking of expansion, we can see that right away, right after coming back to life, they start off by declaring war on Ukraine, or what we call the remaining parts of Ukraine. The Russian army now enters Ukraine, and they push around. Eventually, this Ukrainian government surrenders, and now the entirety of Ukraine is under the Russian control. Without wasting any more time, we can see that they continue with this expansion as now they look towards Poland, who also got screwed up because of the Russian Empire's return. Again, we can see that the Russian troops now enter Poland. They push in from the Kaliningrad region, securing all of the northern parts. They're doing a pretty good job at it too. Down here, they push in and they cut Poland into two parts. The southern part surrender, and a combined Russian army now pushes in. Eventually, with all of this chaos, the remaining parts of Poland also surrender. And this was a decisive victory for the Russian Empire. Later on, we can see that all of Poland got completely annexed by the Russian Empire. They got rid of the two countries which got screwed up because of their return. You know what's happening in the world right now? Pretty much everyone is panicking, especially the US and Canada. Canada because they could maybe one day face an invasion from Russia. Since in my videos, major alliances like NATO, CSTO, the EU or the UN, they do not exist. So that could be possible. And for the Russian Empire, they would have some ambitions. I mean, already they have a lot of things, so we can see that they start off by recruiting more and more troops, and they are recruiting from the newly acquired region of their empire. They're the strongest country in the world right now with everything they have, and after some militarization, we can see that they go down into the Middle East, where now they declare war on Iran. And this is just happening because, well, the Russian Empire wants direct access to the Indian Ocean, and the only way is by declaring war on Iran. I mean, they could invade Afghanistan, but we all know what happened the last time they did it. So yeah, well, now Iran is at war with the Russian Empire, so GG's to Iran. Let's see. We can see that the Russian forces are now at the border with Iran. They start a push in from the Central Asian regions. The Iranians are unable to push them back because they are overwhelmed by the Russian numbers. They also push in from Azerbaijan. Their main goal is to secure the northern regions, which are pretty much the main regions. We can see that these troops were able to meet up, and eventually a combined Russian army now pushes towards the capital city of Tehran. They take the capital city with relative ease, also securing the nearby regions. And from this point, multiple Russian armies now start to push into the main country. This is pretty much all the progress made. And after a few surrenders from different regions, this was all the progress made by the Russian Empire. The people realized that they cannot win against the Russians, so they kinda revolted against their own country. Let's just say this many people. After all of these things, the Iranians were like, no, we can't do this. Finally surrender after years of fighting, and in a peace treaty we can see that all of Iran got completely annexed by the Russian Empire. Unrealistic, I know, but hey, look at it from the map. It just looks so nice. Now they have this straight up connection, which is like, yeah, they're big. Pretty much most of Asia right now. Now they also have access to all of the Iranian oil fields, which, I mean, they already have a lot of resources over here in Siberia, but it's still good to have the Iranian oil. And the Russians are not going to stop here. A few interesting events are going to take place down in the south. The Chinese and the Pakistanis are gonna form an alliance. Right now, the Chinese also don't like what the Russians are doing, so they kind of back off a little, starting their own thing with the Pakistanis. And then there's the Afghans who are just chilling for now. They know that the Russians won't invade them, so they're just there. But the Middle Eastern countries are pretty much worried right now. The Russian Empire, however, sets their focus on some other places. We can see that they sent ultimatums now. An ultimatum was sent to Slovakia, where, yeah, their government collapsed, and now they are a Russian puppet. Hungary, for some reason, just become a puppet themselves. The Russians sent their final ultimatum to Romania, who rejected the ultimatum, and that kind of results in this. Unfortunately for the Romanians, I mean, yeah. We can see that the Russian troops are now at the border with Romania. They start to push in from here. They also have a naval blockade going on around. They cut off Romania from the Black Sea, and they start to push towards the capital city of Bucharest. For some reason, we can see that the Hungarians are also pushing in, and the Romanians are now fighting a two-front war. It might just be that the Hungarians want Transylvania back, I don't know, but they also make a lot of progress. Nothing compared to the Russians though, who now capture the capital city of Bucharest, slaughtering everyone in the process. Then they follow the Danube River, securing all of the regions around it, and a few months later, this is all the progress made by the Russians. The Hungarians also took some more regions from the Romanians, but at this point the government just collapses and they capitulate, surrendering to both sides. In a peace negotiation, we can see that the Russians got most of Romania. Some part of it was given to the Hungarians just because of their war effort, another expansion into Europe. But once again, it is just not enough for the Russians. The Russians, since now they are expansionists, send an ultimatum to Mongolia, which these guys had to accept. I know this thing that the Mongolians wanted to join the Soviet Union, but they said no. But right now, the Russian Empire wants to expand, and that's pretty much their ideology right now. Anyways, because of what's happening over here, we can see that in Europe, the Germans, the French, the Brits, and the Italians now form a new alliance. This is just to stop the Russian expansion. But before other countries could join this alliance, the Russians are gonna do their thing. They send out more ultimatums to the Eastern European countries. For example, they send an ultimatum to Bulgaria. Serbia kind of becomes the vassal itself. They send an ultimatum to Czechia. And yeah, this is what happened. I mean, it's kind of understandable. Eastern Europe is now falling to the Russian Empire. And yeah, the West is gonna try to stop this maybe. Who knows? Another event that happens is Kosovo gets invaded by the Serbs and they actually win. Yeah, that's about it. Now the Russian Empire is kind of fed up of what's going on down here. They don't like it how Turkey controls the Bosphorus Strait and then their entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. They send an ultimatum to Turkey, basically asking them for the Bosphorus Strait, to which of course the Turks say no. The situation escalates and we get this. Yeah, things are about to get hideous. We can see that the Russian forces have now arrived on the border with Turkey. They're also inside of Bulgaria right now. Oh my god. But yeah, they start off their push from the eastern parts of Turkey, and they start to follow the Black Sea. The Turkish forces now arrive on the front lines, but yeah, they're also getting invaded from the western parts, where now the Russians enter from Bulgaria. This is a huge blow because they're getting very close to Istanbul. We can see that the Russian Navy has also surrounded the Black Sea coast, dominating in this region. The Turkish forces, even though have arrived, but are unable to push these guys back, as the Russians now continue their push. And over here on the western parts, they now secure the Gallipoli region and they're closing in on Istanbul. Eventually, the Turks mobilize their entire forces, sending their armies to both of these front lines, and with the arrival of these troops, we can see that the Russians get pushed back and the Turks are able to push them back all the way to their borders now. But here in the east, because there are a lot of Russian forces and more forces are arriving on the front lines, they were unable to push these guys back. But over here, there is now a stalemate. Eventually, the Russians were able to capture half of Istanbul. Now they start their push into Anatolia. Is this Anatolia? I don't know. But yeah, they start to capture these highly populated regions of Turkey, I'm assuming. The Russian Navy also comes into action now, as they make a naval landing in the northern parts, securing all of the northern regions now. And the Turks had to take out their troops from these borders. Yeah, they had to put these guys over here, which lets the Russians to once again push into Turkey. At least with the arrival of the new Turkish armies, they were able to push these guys back a little. They weren't able to completely push them back, but yeah, over here in the west, they make some progress. Still unable to capture Thrace. They push the Russians out of here, but they're losing in the eastern front lines where the Russians are really pushing in now. Eventually, the Russians do get pushed out of the northern parts. The Russians are continuing their push up here, getting very close to Ankara. The Turks are in disarray, so much so that they take out their troops from here once again, which enables the Russians to capture all of Istanbul, and they start to secure some more regions up here. Unfortunately though, the Turkish efforts do not prove anything, as they have now lost Ankara. These troops meet up with each other, cutting off the northern parts where there were a lot of armies who then go ahead and surrender. And from this point, the Russians start their push, securing all of the coastal regions of Turkey. And yeah, they did not want all of Turkey, so they're just gonna try to peace out with the Turks, as they have lost a lot of territories to the Russians. So now let's take a look at this peace negotiation. Yeah, and in a peace negotiation, we can see that all of these parts of Turkey were completely annexed. Some of these eastern parts too. The country is released, but yeah, the Russians really did get pretty much all of what they wanted. But at this point, we can see that a huge thing happens. Because of all of this expansion thingy going on, the Chinese, alongside the Pakistanis, now declare war on the Russian Empire. This is just because things are not looking good for the Russians right now. And crazy enough, countries like Japan, as well as South Korea also join in. North Koreans are just gonna chill out for now. Over here in the West, this alliance also kind of joins in, showing their support, and things are not looking good for the Russian Empire. But we're not going to be covering this war in our video. That is going to be for our next video, and for that, make sure to subscribe and press the bell button, and I will see you in the next one.